Imagine the betrayal of a badge turned against the innocent, or the unimaginable horror of a mother's hands raised in rage against her own child. These are not stories of monsters from fiction, but real tragedies that shattered lives and exposed the darkest corners of the human heart. In this documentary, we explore the cases of Black women serving life or death sentences in U.S. prisons for some of the most brutal murders on record. These women remain behind bars today, their stories a stark reminder of justice's heavy toll. If you're drawn to untold stories of crime and consequence, hit that subscribe button now and turn on notifications. Your support helps us uncover more like this. Also, drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. Let's begin. Case 1. Antoinette Frank. Once a New Orleans police officer, her shocking crimes shook a city already tired of violence. Born on April 30, 1971, Antoinette grew up in New Orleans with a rough childhood. She later claimed her father, Adam Frank, sexually abused her for years, a trauma that would come up in her appeals. As a young adult, she wanted stability and joined the New Orleans Police Department during a push to hire more African-American officers. Despite lying on her application and failing 2 psychological tests, she became a cop on February 20. Colleagues saw her as eager but unpredictable. She won Officer of the Month for community work, but often made bad choices on the job. In late 1994, her life took a dark turn. While responding to a call, she met Rogers Lacaze, a 19-year-old drug dealer with a violent edge. They quickly started a secret, intense romance. Lacaze, small but bold, tagged along on her patrols, pretending to be a trainee and even driving her squad car. Witnesses said they pulled people over for shakedowns, mixing her police badge with his street schemes. Money was tight for Antoinette, who worked extra hours as a security guard at Kim An I, a family-run Vietnamese restaurant in New Orleans East. The Vu family, Ha 24, Quang 17, and Chow 20, along with their parents, treated her like one of their own, sharing meals and trusting her to keep them safe. Trouble brewed in early 90s. They saw Kim An as an easy target, a safe full of weekend cash, and Antoinette had a stolen key. Driven by greed and the thrill of power, the officer who swore to protect planned to rob her friends. On March 4, 1995, the air in New Orleans East was thick with spring humidity. It was closing time at Kim An. Around 11 p.m. Ha and Quang were cleaning the dining room, while Chow, her brother Kwok, and a cook worked in the back. Antoinette and Lacaze had stopped by twice earlier, acting casual and grabbing leftovers to hide their plan. As the restaurant quieted, Chow noticed Antoinette outside, no longer in her uniform, her eyes cold. Sensing danger, Chow hid the night's cash, about $1,500, in the kitchen microwave. Then it happened. Antoinette burst in with the stolen key, pushing Chow, Kwok, and the cook toward the kitchen doorway. Lacaze followed, holding Antoinette's .40 caliber police Glock. Off-duty officer Ronald Williams, 25, was there as a security guard. A married father of 2, Ron was known for his quiet kindness. Without warning, Lacaze shot him in the neck, dropping him to the floor, paralyzed. As Ron begged for his life, Lacaze fired twice more into his head and back. Blood spread across the tiles, the smell sharp in the air. Antoinette turned to Ha and Quang in the dining room. "Where's the money?" she demanded, hitting Quang with her gun when he didn't answer, splitting his lip. Ha, shaking, led them to the safe, but it was empty. The real money was in the microwave. Antoinette stormed to the kitchen, found the cash, and grabbed it. As Ha and Quang knelt, begging in broken English, "Please, no, we're friends," Antoinette raised her gun. She shot Ha 3 times in the chest and head. Ha fell, her eyes wide with betrayal. Quang tried to move. 6 bullets tore into him, blood splashing the walls as he collapsed beside his sister. In the chaos, Chow, Quang, and the cook hid in the walk-in cooler, their hearts pounding. Antoinette and Lacaze fled, dropping him off at an apartment before she sped away. But her police radio crackled, a 911 call from Quang, who'd escaped to a neighbor's house. Sirens screamed. Antoinette, panicking, borrowed a patrol car, put her uniform back on, and rushed back to the scene, acting like a responding officer. She tried to control the situation, even searching the cooler to silence witnesses. Then everything unraveled. Chow burst out of hiding, sobbing and pointing at Antoinette. "Her, she did it." Officers arrested her on the spot. March 4th, Lacaze was caught hours later. In interrogation, Antoinette confessed on tape, "I did it for the money. Lacaze pulled the trigger, but I planned it." She tried to blame him, saying he forced her, but the evidence showed she was the mastermind. Her key, her gun, her return to the scene. The case was airtight. Chow and Kwok's eyewitness accounts, the stolen key, Lacaze using Ron's stolen credit card at a gas station, ballistics matching Antoinette's service weapon, and bloody shoe prints tying them to the crime. Forensics confirmed the V's were shot at close range, execution style. Antoinette was indicted on April 28, 1995, for 3 counts of first-degree murder. Lacaze's trial came first, and he was convicted in July 1995, sentenced to death. Antoinette's trial followed in September. The jury saw graphic photos and heard the V family's tearful testimony. On September 20, because she killed multiple people, including a fellow officer, she was sentenced to death by lethal injection on October 20. She appealed for years, claiming bad
bad lawyers, racial bias in the jury, and mental health issues tied to her father's alleged abuse. Louisiana courts rejected her appeals, and the U.S. Supreme Court declined to hear her case in two. Questions lingered. Was Lakazi the real leader, or was Antoinette the cold-blooded planner? In 2023, her clemency bid failed, but in May 2025, a New Orleans judge granted her a new post-conviction hearing, stopping the state's attempt to dismiss it. As of September 2025, she waits for that ruling in a 6x9 cell, spending her days reading and reflecting. She never served in the military, but her police badge made her betrayal cut deeper. The Vu family rebuilt, moving Kim Ann to a new location after Hurricane Katrina. Ron's widow raised their two boys alone, his name honored on the National Law Enforcement Memorial. New Orleans grieved 3 lives lost, and a trust in police that was badly broken, a stain that lingers. But the horrors didn't end there. Case 2, Patricia Blackman, who is now 56 years old. She has spent 23 years on Alabama's death row at the Julia Tutwiler Prison for Women. She was a mother whose anger turned deadly against the child she had promised to protect. Patricia grew up in Dothan, Alabama, a small town in the Wiregrass region. She was born on November 3, 1969, in a working-class black family. Details about her early life are limited, but there are signs of instability. She had no prior convictions, though people later mentioned her temper. By her 20s, she was married with 2 biological children, getting by on odd jobs. In 1998, when she was 29, she and her husband adopted 16-month-old Dominica Bryant, a cute toddler from foster care, with dark curls and bright eyes. This gave the couple a chance to expand their family. Court records show the adoption came from a mix of real hope and hidden pressures, but problems started showing up quickly. The abuse began quietly, hidden inside their simple home in Dothan. Relatives noticed that Dominica, small and just barely 2 years old, would flinch at loud voices and have faint bruises that were brushed off as normal toddler accidents. Patricia's frustration grew. Witnesses remembered her getting angry over the girl's cries or messes, and she would smack her harder each time. By spring 1999, the beatings got worse. She used belts for punishment and her hands to control the child. Dominica was too young to defend herself and suffered in silence, her little body covered in marks of pain. On May 29, 1999, it was a hot, sticky day in Dothan. Patricia was home alone with Dominica and her other children while her husband was at work. Around noon, things boiled over, maybe over a spilled sippy cup or the girl not wanting a nap. Patricia later said it was a fall, but the real story came out differently. Step by step, the terrible events played out in that small living room. It started with a sharp slap across Dominica's cheek for some small act of defiance. The girl cried loudly, which only made Patricia angrier. She grabbed a belt and whipped the toddler's legs and back, leaving raised welts. Dominica tried to crawl away while sobbing, but Patricia picked her up and slammed her against the wall. Then came a punch that cracked her ribs. The child gasped as the air was knocked out of her. Still not finished, Patricia held her down and stomped on her tiny chest with a sneaker. The mark of the shoe was later captured in forensic photos, like a ghostly print on bruised skin. Dominica's skull broke from a final blow, maybe from a thrown toy or just raw force. Blood dripped from her ear as she went limp, her eyes closing. Patricia waited, her heart pounding as Dominica's breathing grew shallow and stopped. She panicked and called 911, her voice shaking. "My baby's not breathing." She fell off the bed. Paramedics arrived quickly and found the girl cold on the floor, surrounded by toys. At the hospital, doctors saw through the story. There were old fractures healing in her arms, fresh bruises like dark clouds and marks from being tied up before. Dominica was declared dead at 3:17 p.m. The cause was blunt force trauma, a planned killing disguised as an accident. In the hours that followed, Patricia told her older kids to say the girl had fallen. She paced in the ER waiting room, pretending to be heartbroken, even hugging social workers. But suspicion grew fast. Nurses spotted inconsistencies, and relatives remembered her complaints about the troublesome adoption. By evening, Dothan police focused on her, talking to neighbors who had heard cries that afternoon. She was arrested quickly on May 30, 1999, and charged with capital murder because the victim was under 14 and it was intentional. The evidence built up like a stack of accusations. The autopsy by Dr. Alfredo Porades showed a skull fracture that didn't match a fall, multiple broken bones from repeated hits, and that telling shoe print matching her sneakers. Family members shared stories. Cousins described Dominica's fear of Mama Pat, and a bloody belt was found in the laundry. No fancy forensics were needed. The timeline of her 911 call didn't line up with the injuries, proving it was a long assault. The trial captured attention in Houston County in April 2002. Prosecutors showed a pattern of cruelty, while the defense argued it was an accident due to Patricia's stress as a mom. After 2 days of heartbreaking photos, the jury convicted her on April 18, 2002 of capital murder. On June 7, 2002, she was sentenced to death, with everyone agreeing because of the brutality against a helpless child. Appeals focused on whether the child victim law was constitutional, her mental health, possible depression, but no official diagnosis, and jury bias. Alabama courts turned them down, and the U.S. Supreme Court refused to hear the case in 2009. There have been no requests for clemency yet, but her case is still in Rule 30. 1932 proceeding. Controversies include Patricia's ongoing claim of innocence. It was an accident, but no major revelations. The focus remains on the victim's young age driving the harsh penalty. Her background was clean before the crime, with no military service, but the adoption system's failures got some quiet attention. Why were warning signs missed? Since August 2002, Patricia has been on death row, where her days mix isolation and routine, Bible study, limited family visits, and a cell with old photos of happier times. Dothan was shaken by the case, and child advocates pushed for changes. Dominiqua's story became a sad example in Alabama's foster care tragedies.
Case 3. Linda Carty, now 66, has spent 23 years on death row in Texas's Mountain View unit in Gatesville. Born in St. Kitts and a British citizen, her story, from teacher to informant to convicted killer, has grabbed attention worldwide, stirring up questions about justice across borders. Linda grew up in sunny St. Kitts. Born on October 5th, 19, she settled in Houston, studied pharmacology at the University of Houston, and started a family. She had 2 kids from an earlier marriage and a daughter with her American husband, Zebediah Carty, whom she married in 19. Court records don't mention mental health issues, but her appeals later pointed to stress from her informant days, cartel threats, and paranoia that haunted her. By early 2001, Linda's marriage was falling apart. Zebediah filed for divorce in March, and they fought over custody of their daughter. Desperate to fix things, Linda started telling everyone she was pregnant. On May 15, she told neighbors, co-workers, even a storage unit worker, "I'm having a baby boy tomorrow." Her stomach showed no signs of pregnancy, but she kept up the story, sounding excited and insistent, according to her neighbor Florence Myers. That night, Linda rented a gray Plymouth Sundance from Budget, even though her blue Oldsmobile worked fine. Looking back, it seems clear she made up the pregnancy to win Zebediah back, to show she was a devoted mom he couldn't leave. Joanna Rodriguez, a 25-year-old Honduran immigrant, was at home in her small apartment on Lockwood Drive, holding her 3-day-old son Joshua. Joanna, a single mom living off temp jobs, had just given birth at Ben Taub Hospital. Joshua was her miracle after past miscarriages. 2 friends, Raimundo Castro and Deborah Marquez, were staying with her. Around 1 a.m., a loud knock woke them. 3 masked men with guns burst in after Joanna opened the door. "Where's the baby?" one shouted. They tied up Raimundo and Deborah with duct tape and hit them with their guns. Joanna begged, clutching Joshua. "No, please, he's just a newborn." But the men grabbed the baby and dragged Joanna out, her screams echoing. Outside, they shoved her into the trunk of Linda's rented Plymouth, with Joshua beside her. One of the men answered a cell phone call from Linda. Records later showed, "We're in. Do you want it?" he said. "She's outside. Get her." They drove to a dark lot near Linda's apartment. In the trunk, Joanna fought to breathe, scratching at the lid until her nails broke. She suffocated, her body growing cold, while Joshua cried softly, unharmed. The men left her there and took the baby to Linda's place. That morning, Linda acted like nothing was wrong. At 6 a.m., she called Zebediah, saying, "Come quick, I had the baby." She showed off Joshua to neighbors, claiming he was hers, though co-defendants later said she drugged him with Benadryl to keep him quiet. But her story fell apart fast. Joanna's roommates, freed by a passerby, called 911 by 2 a.m. and described the attack. Police started looking at Linda after Florence mentioned her fake pregnancy and a baby seat spotted in her car days earlier. By 11 a.m., detectives were at Linda's door. She played innocent. "Baby, he's with family." But she was nervous, sweating despite the air conditioning. When questioned, Linda's story crumbled. She admitted renting the Plymouth but said thieves stole it with her baby inside. Pressed harder, she took police to the lot where they found Joanna's body in the trunk, marked by duct tape and suffocation. Joshua was safe in Linda's apartment, lying in a crib filled with stolen diapers. She was arrested at 1 p.m. on May 16, 2001, as neighbors watched. Her co-defendants, Gerald Anderson, Charles Robinson, and Chris Robinson, quickly turned on her, saying she planned it all and paid them $500 each to steal the baby. The evidence was tight. Cell phone records showed 11 calls from Linda to Gerald between midnight and 3 a.m., pinging near the crime scene. Her fingerprints were on the Plymouth's trunk and baby items inside. Joanna's roommates recognized the car from sketches. An autopsy confirmed Joanna died from deliberate suffocation, no water in her lungs, ruling out an accident. A jailmate, Sarah Hernandez, said Linda asked her to fake a letter blaming Chris and Zebediah, tying it to her old DEA days. The fake pregnancy story pointed to her motive. In June 2001, Linda was charged with capital murder, tied to the kidnapping and death. Her trial in January 2002 gripped Houston. Prosecutors painted her as a liar, driven by a fake pregnancy and informant paranoia. Her defense claimed she was framed by cartel enemies. After 2 weeks, on February 19, 2002, the jury found her guilty. 2 days later, they sentenced her to death by lethal injection, agreeing she was a future danger due to the kidnapping murder. Appeals followed but failed.
child. The Texas Court of Criminal Appeals upheld the verdict in 2004, the Fifth Circuit rejected her in 2009, and the U.S. Supreme Court refused her case in 2010, despite Britain arguing it was inhumane to execute their citizen. A 2018 appeal, claiming bad lawyers and hidden evidence, was denied, even with another UK plea. Now, Linda lives in a 23 by 10-foot cell with 3 weekly rec yard visits. She leans on Bible studies, paints and reads pharmacology books, the UK consulate visits, and she prays for Joshua, now 24 and adopted. Her DEA past made her crime feel like a deeper betrayal, an informant turned predator. Houston's Hispanic community mourned Joanna with candlelit vigils on Lockwood Drive. Her case raised alarms about baby thefts, while Britain's efforts highlighted tensions over the death penalty. It's a grim story of immigrant hopes shattered by a nightmare. Case 4, Tina LaSonia Brown, now 55, has spent 13 years on death row at Lowell Correctional Institution in Ocala, Florida. She's the last woman in the state facing a death sentence. Born on July 19th in Pensacola, Tina grew up in the sticky heat of Escambia County's trailer parks. Not much is known about her early years. No criminal record, no military service, but court documents sketch a tough life. A single mom to her daughter Brittany Miller, who was 19 at the time of the crime, Tina scraped by in a worn-out mobile home in Ensley's working-class neighborhood. Her past was rough. Court appeals mentioned sexual abuse by her father, her mother leaving her behind, and a cocaine addiction that messed with her head for years. She got clean before the crime, but old habits left her quick to anger. In early 2010, trouble brewed in the tight-knit trailer park. Tina, Brittany, and their neighbor Heather Trini Lee, 21, were close at first, sharing barbecues and small talk. Then Adriana Redon Zimmerman, a 19-year-old free spirit living next door, stirred things up. Petite with a bright laugh, Adriana slept with Brittany's boyfriend, sparking a feud. Brittany threw the first punch, but Adriana fought back with a stun gun, dropping Brittany with a jolt. Word spread fast. Adriana's trouble, she'll get hers. Tina, fiercely protective, let the betrayal fester, mixing with her old demons. The motive, revenge, plain and simple, punish the homewrecker and restore family pride in a world that had beaten them down. On March 24, 2010, the air was thick with Gulf Coast humidity, dogwoods blooming pink outside Tina's trailer. Around 8 p.m., as the sky darkened, Tina called Adriana. "Come over, let's make peace. I got fried chicken." Adriana, trusting and forgiving, walked the gravel path to Tina's door, her ponytail bouncing. Tina's smile was cold. Inside, the trap sprang. Brittany and Heather jumped Adriana, slamming her against the faded wall. Fists flew. Brittany's nails scratched Adriana's cheek, drawing blood. Adriana gasped, "Why?" But Tina grabbed a crowbar from the kitchen, gripping it like a weapon. The attack was brutal in the cramped living room, under the glow of second-hand lamps. Tina swung the crowbar, cracking Adriana's shoulder with a sickening snap. Adriana fell, crying out. Heather pinned her arms, digging a knee into her ribs. Brittany grabbed Adriana's own stun gun, stolen weeks earlier, and zapped her thigh, making her muscles seize. Adriana's jeans soaked with urine from the shock, her pleas fading to whimpers. "Please, I said sorry." Tina zapped her neck 3 times, leaving red burns, then swung the crowbar again, splitting Adriana's scalp. Blood pooled on the linoleum, mixing with the smell of fried grease. They weren't done. They dragged Adriana, barely conscious, barely 100 pounds, out to Tina's beat-up Chevy, her heels scraping the gravel. They tossed her in the trunk like trash, her faint moans barely audible as they drove off. 5 miles later, they stopped in a pine-covered clearing off 9 Mile Road, moonlight filtering through the trees. They pulled Adriana out, pine needles crunching underfoot. Heather doused her with gasoline from a red can, soaking her hair and clothes. Tina lit a Zippo, and with a flick, Adriana went up in flames, her screams tearing through the night as 60% of her body burned. The 3 watched, faces lit by the fire, then fled as smoke rose. But Adriana wasn't done fighting. She rolled in the dirt to put out the flames, her skin peeling like wet paper. Blinded and burned, she crawled a quarter mile to a stranger's porch, gasping, "Help! They burned me." She called 911 at 11:47 p.m. Medics airlifted her to Mobile's USA Medical Center, where doctors battled sepsis and tried skin grafts. For 16 painful days, hooked to IVs and morphine, she held on. Before dying on April 9, 2010, at 2:13 a.m., she named her attackers Tina, Brittany, Heather. The autopsy confirmed it. Severe burns, smoke in her lungs, no chance. After the fire, the 3 acted normal. Tina hosted a movie night, fake laughs hiding their fear. Brittany bleached clothes in the tub. Heather dumped the gas can in the woods. But Adriana's words pointed straight at them. Deputies arrested Heather on April 10, and she caved. taking a life sentence plea. Tina planned it. She said, "Make her pay." Tina and Brittany were nabbed the next day. In their trailer, cops found the crowbar with Audriana's blood and the stun gun, still charged. All three were charged with first-degree premeditated murder. The evidence was overwhelming. Audriana's dying words, DNA on the crowbar, gas residue on Heather's shoes, and tire tracks from Tina's Chevy at the scene. Heather's testimony burned hottest. Tina swung first, said no witnesses. At Tina's trial on June 18, 2012, in Escambia Circuit Court, jurors saw grim photos of Audriana's charred body. They took 1 hour to say guilty. On June 26, they voted unanimously for death. Judge Gary Burgosh sentenced Tina to lethal injection on September 28, 2012. Appeals didn't help. The Florida Supreme Court rejected motions in 2014 on May 15 and July 8. The U.S. Supreme Court said no on December 1, 2014. A 2018 claim about bad lawyers and a biased juror was denied on April 5, Another try in 2020 failed, and a 2023 appeal questioning Heather's honesty was tossed out on May 10. No clemency came. Tina's now Florida's only woman on death row after Margaret Allen's death in 2024. She's shown some remorse. "I lost control," she told doctors, but jurors didn't buy her rough past as an excuse. On death row, Tina lives in an 8x10 cell, passing time with art classes and letters to Brittany, who's serving life. She gets 15-minute showers and outdoor rec under barbed wire. Her old cocaine scars linger, but isolation hits harder. No prior crimes, but the trailer park's unwritten rules broke her. Ensley mourned Audriana with purple ribbon vigils, her name now tied to domestic violence campaigns. Florida cracked down on stun gun laws after the case. Tina's story, a rare one, women make up just 2% of death row, shows rage doesn't discriminate.
Case 5. Tiffany Moss. Tiffany Nicole Moss, now 42, has been on death row for over 6 years at Arendelle State Prison in Alto, Georgia, the only woman in the state facing such a sentence. Once a preschool teacher whose warm smile hid a dark reality, her case shocked the nation and led to major changes in how Georgia protects kids. Tiffany was born on July 20, 1983, in Georgia. Growing up in a tough home, court records later showed she faced physical and sexual abuse as a child, with blows to her head causing brain damage that experts said affected her judgment and self-control. She had no criminal record until adulthood, but there were hints of trouble. She met Aman Giovanni Moss at Freedom Christian Church in Lawrenceville. He was a truck driver raising his daughter Amani alone, and saw Tiffany's job as a preschool aide as a sign of stability. They married in July 2009, blending their families, Amani, a quiet but strong girl, with Tiffany's 2 young children. At first they seemed like a happy church-going family, but Tiffany secretly resented Amani, her stepdaughter from another relationship, seeing her as a burden. The trouble started in March 2010, when Tiffany's anger exploded over Amani's homework. She beat the 6-year-old with a curtain rod, leaving painful welts on her back, arms, and legs. A school nurse noticed the bruises, and police showed up at their Snellville apartment. Tiffany admitted, "I hit her 3 times. She needed discipline." She was charged with child cruelty, pleaded guilty under Georgia's First Offender Act, and got 5 years probation plus parenting classes. The Georgia Division of Family and Children's Services, DFCS, closed the case after she followed the rules, missing the deeper problems. Tiffany lost her job and her anger toward Amani grew, blaming the girl while treating her own kids with care. The abuse continued as the family moved 4 times in 3 years. Aman's long truck driving trips left Tiffany in charge with no one to stop her. By July 2012, 9-year-old Amani ran away twice, barefoot and crying, banging on neighbors' doors. "Mama tied me with a belt, gave me a cold shower, it hurts." Police brought her back each time, finding too little proof to take her away. At a Mother's Day gathering in May 2013, family noticed Amani's chopped hair, downcast eyes, and fear of loud voices. That summer, despite relatives' pleas, Tiffany and Aman pulled Amani from school to homeschool her, cutting her off from the outside world. An anonymous tip to DFCS in August warned of neglect, but with no address, it went nowhere. By late summer 2013, in their new Lawrenceville apartment, things got worse. Tiffany locked Amani in her dark bedroom, giving her almost no food, just a slice of bread or water while her siblings ate treats like cookies. Amani, once full of life, wasted away. Her body shrank to 32 pounds, the weight of a 3-year-old, though she was 10. An autopsy later called it exquisite cruelty. Her organs were tiny, her hair thin, her body weak from months of starvation and isolation. On October 24, 2013, the end came in their Coventry Point apartment. Amani collapsed in the bathtub, likely from dehydration, though Aman thought it was a seizure. Tiffany carried her limp body to a bed and left her there, not calling a doctor or 911. For days, Amani's breaths grew weaker. On October 28, as fall leaves fell outside, the 10-year-old's heart stopped under a thin blanket. Tiffany didn't cry or panic. She planned. She called Aman at work. "She's gone. Be on our criminal mind." He rushed home and found Amani's body. Tiffany refused to call police, wanting to hide it.
On October 29th, she bought sheets and coveralls. Amanen got a steel trash can, bags, charcoal, and lighter fluid. On Halloween night, as trick-or-treaters roamed, they carried Amani's body to a wooded area near their complex. They lit charcoal and lighter fluid, but after 5 minutes of smoky flames, they panicked and stopped. The body wasn't burning. They hid it in a closet inside the trash can. By November 1st, Amanen was falling apart. He told a friend, "We tried to burn her. I can't." The friend urged him to turn himself in. At 4 a.m., Amanen called 911, pretending he was suicidal. Tiffany took her kids to her mother's house, then surrendered to police without a fight. Officers found Amani's body in the apartment, charred in places and painfully thin from starvation. The evidence was overwhelming. The autopsy confirmed malnutrition killed Amani, not illness. Her bedroom showed scratches on the lock from trying to get out, and crumbs scattered like she'd searched for food. Her siblings told police, "Amani ate trash. Mama said no food." Tiffany's text to friends claimed Amani was fine, just picky, but her calm after the death told a different story. Amani pleaded guilty to hiding the body and got 20 years. Tiffany faced trial alone. In November 2013, she was charged with malice murder, felony murder, cruelty, and concealing a death. Her trial came in April 2019, and in a shocking move, she fired her legal team and chose to represent herself, despite warnings about her brain damage. Judge George Hutchinson allowed it, with standby lawyers helping from the sidelines. In the Gwinnett County courtroom, from April 22 to 29, prosecutors showed heartbreaking photos of Amani's skeletal body and burn marks, making jurors cry. Tiffany said nothing, no opening statement, no questions, no witnesses, just "God has this." The jury took 90 minutes to find her guilty on all charges, citing extreme cruelty to a child under 4. On May 4th, 2019, she was sentenced to death by lethal injection, the first death sentence in Georgia in 5 years. Her appeals began quickly. Her standby lawyers filed a motion for a new trial on November 15, 2019, saying she wasn't fit to represent herself, but it was denied. The case is now under review by the Georgia Supreme Court, with no ruling or execution date set as of 20. Federal appeals may follow, raising questions about her brain damage and whether she should have been allowed to represent herself. Tiffany's childhood trauma showed up in brain scans, but no competency hearing was held. In letters, she's expressed regret. "I failed her," but her silence at trial makes some doubt her remorse. She had no military history, only her earlier probation. On death row, Tiffany lives in an 8x12 cell, finding comfort in faith groups and sketching pictures of children. Amani's death led to vigils across Georgia and new laws in 2014 to strengthen abuse investigations, saving over 500 kids through better oversight. Amani's memory lives on, but the pain of her loss remains. Case 6. Taylor Renee Parker. Taylor Renee Parker, 32, sits on death row at Mountain View Unit in Gatesville, Texas, nearly 3 years after a crime that shattered a small town. Her lies and betrayal turned a friendship into a nightmare, leaving a scar on New Boston, Texas. Taylor grew up in the piney woods of East Texas, born around 9. By 2020, at 27, she was childless after miscarriages and desperate for a baby. She drifted into New Boston, a tight-knit railroad town of 4,600, where she met Reagan Michelle Simmons Hancock, 21. Reagan, a lively hairdresser, was 35 weeks pregnant with her second daughter, Braxlyn Sage, a miracle after years of infertility. Married to Homer since their teens, Reagan adored their 2-year-old Kylie and dreamed of her girls growing up together. Taylor played the role of a caring friend, offering rides and chatting over tea, but her envy festered. Rumors followed her, fake pregnancies, lies about feeling kicks, and an obsession with C-section videos. By October 2020, with fall leaves turning gold in Bowie County, Taylor's lies grew bolder. She told family she was pregnant too, stuffing her shirt to fake a belly. On October 7, she texted Reagan, "Need advice, baby stuff?" Their bond seemed tight, Reagan's trust complete. That evening, Taylor visited Reagan's small home on McCoy Road. Homer was out hunting, and Kylie napped. They talked about baby names and nursery plans in the cozy living room. Then Taylor's mask fell. Around 10 p.m. as crickets chirped outside, she grabbed a kitchen knife and attacked. The first slash cut Reagan's throat, stifling her cry. Reagan fought hard, scratching Taylor's arms, knocking over lamps, shattering glass in a desperate struggle. The fight was brutal, lit by dim lamplight. Blood stained the hardwood floor as Taylor stabbed Reagan over 100 times. Chest, lungs, abdomen torn open. Reagan, just 5'2", was fierce, clawed back, her hands sliced in defense. She gasped, "Why, my baby?" as Taylor grabbed a scalpel, stolen from a vet friend, and cut deeper, ripping out Reagan's uterus in a rush of blood and tissue. Braxlyn was born alive, her tiny cries filling the chaos. A 5-pound, 34-week baby. Reagan, fading, watched Taylor wrap the baby and whisper, "My little one." Taylor fled at 11:15 p.m., leaving Reagan dying and Kylie asleep in her crib. At dawn on October 9, Taylor sped north on Highway 82, driving wildly at 90-mile-per-hour with Braxlyn beside her. A DeKalb trooper pulled her over for swerving. She lied, saying she'd given birth on the roadside and the baby wasn't breathing. Paramedics rushed them to McCurtain Memorial in Idabel, Oklahoma. 20 miles away. Nurses grew suspicious, no signs of labor, and Taylor refused exams, saying just the baby. Braxlin's heart stopped from trauma and cold, and she was pronounced dead at 1:47 a.m. Back in New Boston, Reagan's mom, Jessica Brooks, found the horrific scene. Door open, Reagan's body torn apart, blood everywhere. Her 911 call was choked with grief as deputies rushed in. Taylor's lies unraveled fast. Hospital staff alerted Texas authorities, and she was arrested by 3 p.m. that day, still in scrubs with blood under her nails. In questioning, she claimed, "I wanted her baby. Mine died." But the evidence was damning. Reagan's phone showed Taylor's last call, and cell pings tracked her escape. Taylor's phone revealed searches like C-section at home and baby removal safe, plus text to an ex about getting my girl soon. Forensics found Reagan's DNA in Taylor's car trunk and under her seats. Reagan's fingernails were embedded in the placenta from her fight. The autopsy showed 114 stab wounds, called defensive overkill, and Braxlin's umbilical cord was crudely cut, leaving her without oxygen. Taylor's jailhouse schemes, like faking miscarriage tears, only deepened her guilt. Indicted on October 15, 2020, for capital murder of Reagan and Braxlin, Taylor's trial ran from September to November 2022 in Bowie County. Prosecutors Kelly S. Crisp and Clint Allen showed her obsession. She stole a life to fake one. The defense argued for life in prison, saying Braxlin's death wasn't planned. The jury, 6 men, 6 women, took 50 minutes to convict on October 30, citing multiple murders in one scheme. During the 25-day penalty phase, Reagan's sister Emily read a tearful statement, "You tore her open, evil flesh demon." Appeals are ongoing, with the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals reviewing into 2025, no briefs filed yet. Federal appeals could follow. Taylor's jail antics, smuggling notes for escape funds, and faking pregnancies to manipulate guards, hint at antisocial traits, though she had no violent history. Her background showed only petty cons, no military service. On death row, Taylor lives in a 10-by-6 cell, reading law books and scheming under watchtowers. New Boston honors Reagan with purple ribbons and candles. Braxlin's name etched in memorials. Homer raises Kylie alone. The case sparked alerts about womb theft, a dark mark among Texas's 200-plus death row inmates. These women's paths, forged in pain and choice, leave indelible marks on justice's ledger, a call to cherish the vulnerable, question the unchecked. From betrayal's blade to neglect's quiet blade, what threads bind such tragedies? Share your reflections in the comments. How can communities better shield the innocent before shadows fall? Thank you for joining this solemn exploration. Until next time, stay curious, stay compassionate, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.